Okay, well, welcome everybody to Arbiter Sports. We're excited to come to you today from Arbiter Sports here in Sandy, Utah. It's a little cold outside. We got some snow. My name is Dave Martin. I'm the actual implementation webinar guy here, supervisor here at Arbiter Sports. I do have also one of our top support agents with us, Jimmy. He's going to be on the mic today. Jimmy, introduce yourself. How long have you been here with Arbiter?
How's it going, everyone? Jimmy Henry Dempster. Been with Arbiter Sports around 4 years.
So a lot of good knowledge in the room today. We're going to go through our webinar. We're going to talk a little bit about doing games today. Now, before we get in, let's go ahead and we'll get through some of our household chores, you could say, of it. So if you haven't been to a webinar before, we do have a box over to the right-hand side that's going to give you the opportunity to be able to ask questions. If you ask a question, we'll try to respond either during or after the webinar. Feel free to ask any questions you have. If it's something pertaining to what we have today, we'll generally answer it as we go. If it's something maybe a little bit later, you may have something verbal or something just written to you. There is an option to raise your hands, but we can't unmute you, unfortunately, today. We will just be taking those questions. So quickly, I want to show you a couple things that you can use, and Jimmy will be putting this website in the chat form down below. But this is our welcome to our schools community. So if you go to arbitersports.force.com/schools, this gives you an opportunity to be able to look at our knowledge article base. This has been built out and continually being built out for you to be able to look at different articles. Today we're going to be focusing specifically on the scheduling section. We're going to go over some of these topics as far as participation fees, what specifically, how do we create a game, tournaments, workers, officials, different things like that for us. So we're going to talk a bit about that today. Now, today is our second webinar for the year, so we will have more webinars in the future. So if we don't go into something in depth, we will be able to get to it eventually as we go through. So you have to keep coming back, checking out our webinars. If you miss a webinar, we do have, and this is on our page underneath our Getting Started, there's a section for webinars. It talks about past webinars, which will take you to our Go to Stage. This is a place where you can go ahead and you can see all of our past webinars that we've done. If you're a school, we can see all the actual onboarding for our schools or school webinars. If you'd like to see maybe what our officials do or our signers do, you can look at that. Or you can even check out our awesome commercial we have there. We also have our YouTube channel, Arbiter Sports. This lets you look at the different videos we've created. These are going to usually be some of our webinars, but they're also going to be some 1 minute to 2 minute little tutorials that you can take. So different places, but all that can be accessed here from our school community. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask about that as well. So let's dive in. We're going to get into our Arbiter game today, talk a little bit about scheduling, some games, some tournaments, some meets, what it looks like, why we have these different icons down below, different things like that. Now, some of yours may be a little bit different from mine. Generally, it should be both basically the same, and I'll try to call out any of those differences here today. So if we first start out, you guys can get logged into ArbiterGame. You should have your look or what it looks like here on the ArbiterGame profile here as far as that goes. So when we're wanting to add a game, we go ahead and we click on this green button over to the right-hand side, which says Add New. Now you have a couple of choices here. So you can add a game, a practice, a meet, a tournament, another event, or we can import games. We'll go through most of these today so you can see a little bit how to use them, including the import game. Now when we get to import games, we won't go very specific because that will be its own webinar. But let's kind of dive into these different options. So if I just have one single game that I want to enter in, I would go ahead and choose New Game. Go. So now we get into the create game basically section. This section, we can go ahead and we can put any type of like name that we'd like up here. It's optional, not required. For example, it shows homecoming game. So let's go ahead and put that down here. So we have our homecoming game. We could look at who is our teams. Now our previous webinars, we've helped to set up in our onboarding. So this is our school's onboarding over here. We've set up different sites. We've set up different teams. We've put in our students. So we're kind of going from that point. So we can go ahead and we can select our teams. These are all the teams we have. Today we're going to be focusing on our boys varsity baseball. So let's go ahead and find our boys varsity baseball here. There we go. Now you might see where one has a green and one has a white. We'll talk a little bit about that in a different webinar, but that's basically underneath our squads. So we see our boys varsity baseball, and we can go versus, and we can choose the different opponents. Now you could be to be announced or to be determined, or you can actually choose a specific opponent today. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to go against Desert Hills. Now, once we've selected that it's a home game, the system automatically recognizes that our boys varsity baseball plays at our site, which is Test Alta High School, which you could change if you wanted to, as well as our auxiliary gym. Now you can see obviously the auxiliary gym isn't right. They wouldn't play baseball in the gym unless it's waffle baseball or something. So we'd want to go ahead and we want to give them the baseball diamond. We can adjust that in our section here in our teams if we wanted to automatically replace that. Maybe we'll have time to do that today. So then we get into our next section, which is to their start date. So go ahead and you want to choose the date in which this game would be played. We're going to be playing the end of this week on the 16th. And we can set our start time at 4 o'clock. Now this 4 o'clock is something that we've automatically put into our team section, but you can change the date at any time. We're going to say that our varsity team, though, plays at 3:30 instead of the 4 o'clock. We'll also see that this game is a 2-hour long game. Obviously, you can go for 12 hours, but this helps with the controlling the site, so making sure no teams show up. Now, our published games, this is for our Arbiter Live. So if you guys use Arbiter Live, which is a place where people can go to look at your information. So let's look at Arbiter Live real quick. So Arbiter Live is a place where somebody could go and they could actually look up your school. So we'll look up Cottonwood High School, for example. We would choose that, and then this would give them the ability to see all the teams at Cottonwood, including when the games are. So I could go underneath boys varsity. I could see when they're being played, and when I can go, I can get some more information a little bit about what's happening. So that's our published section over here if you decide to publish that to Arbiter Live. Now league, non-scrimmage, scrimmage tournament, this is something that you can choose to use. Generally people just leave it at the league section. Now because we've chosen that it's a home game, the facilities request automatically populates here. If you see, if I change it to an away team, my transportation shows up. We're going to look at both of them today, but our facilities request, there's two things that you can use. Now, in this particular form, we have what we call our facilities request. That's just our generic. So this tells us what time do we need to set up. So we could say that we need to set up the baseball diamond, let's say an hour beforehand at 2:30. Our game gets over in 2 hours, which 3:30, 4:30, 5:30. So let's say they clean up at 6:30. So once that's in, that's all you need to do. We wouldn't put any check marks here. Now, if we've created the game, we can send an email over to our facilities coordinator, and we can put a checkbox there. Now, there is also a thing in our, as well as with transportation, it's called School Dude. Now, what School Dude is a third-party application that we use, or a third-party company, that can actually be used from your facilities department as well as your transportation department For these to seamlessly communicate, instead of you having to send the email, School Dude is a way where you can actually set it up here. It'll transport to School Dude, which will then go to your transportation or facilities section. If you have any questions about School Dude, we can provide you our sales number so that they can provide that to you. There is an additional cost to that. If let's say we needed to require transportation because our baseball diamond is a little bit farther away than what we wanted it to be, we could go ahead and we could tell when we want to dismiss students. When is our departure time? Is it just a drop off and return, or is it a drop off and wait? Have we communicated that? And how many buses, vans, cars, or lift buses do we need? Since we're going to be at home, we don't need our transportation request. And we're going to scroll down here. Now this officials section, you generally have 3 choices. You have where no officials are required for the game. You have where you as a school are going to assign them. Or if you set it up in the team section that a specific group will go ahead and actually assign the games for you. In our case, we're going to use Arbiter to the fullest and let somebody else assign those games. And then a little bit further down is our participation and breach fees. Now you can go ahead and you can use these or you cannot. Now let me get these set up and I'm going to turn the time over to Jimmy to answer any questions.
All right, so kind of as David was saying, there are a couple of things that we'll be going through today. Of course, the officials, this is a big part of it, making sure you have officials for the game. If you are setting up the game as an away game, it will not let you choose the officiating option. That option is only available for the home teams. So as you're going through this, if you're adding in your away games and you said, hey, I remember on the webinar it said I could pick who's assigning the officials and it doesn't give you that option, just remember you have to be the home team for that.
Good. Thank you, Jimmy. Now, as I set this breach fee up, I could go ahead and I can choose that a school needs to pay me $60 when they want to participate. It's paid by the opponent. And if they don't end up, it'll automatically hit the 60. I could change this to 20. And this is a contract that you could go ahead and now establish with the other group. The good part about the participation fee and breach fees is if you have both groups in ArbiterGame, you can pay these fees within ArbiterGame. So they don't have to be outside of extra or anything like that. It can automatically be paid within Arbiter. So we've set up our game. We can go ahead and we can create game, or we can create game anew. The create game anew would actually leave me on this screen, but I'm going to choose create game, and that's going to go ahead and give me the opportunity to look at my game. Okay. Now you'll notice over here to the right-hand side, anything in blue is when we have an event going. So I've chose the 26th because that was our day that we're having. We can see our school is full of activity on that particular day. Looks like we got some figure skating going, some baseball, looks like boys varsity football, and it looks like girls junior varsity softball. Now, once we have our game in here, we start to notice some icons. Now you'll notice that all the icons stay within their own field. And we'll kind of go through these particular icons. So the first thing is where we talk about our contracts. Anything that's in red needs your attention. Anything in yellow means that we're waiting for somebody else to do something. And then anything in green means that you're good to go. So if I were to choose my homecoming game, which we've labeled here, at 3:30 at the baseball diamond, I can click here and I have an option for me to go ahead and make sure that I accept the contracts. Now so we want to go ahead and we're going to accept the contract here. We're choosing that it's here. We know it's going to be assigned. We can hit accept. Now it's gone yellow. The reason why it's gone yellow is because we're waiting now for Desert Hills to accept the contract for you to be able to do that. Now there is a way in your settings to go ahead and automatically accept your own contracts as far as that goes.
Yeah, and also with your opponent's contracts, depending on what the opponent has set up, it will allow you to accept the contract for them or not. So in this instance, on David's homecoming game, it doesn't allow him to accept the contract for Desert Hills because of an option that they have chosen on their settings.
Good. So as you see here, Desert Hills has said that they don't let people accept it. They will have to wait for it. So good information there. Then we get into our next section, which is our referees. So you can see that we actually have, it looks like 4 different referees that we're waiting for Chase to go ahead and assign to us. So that's why it's yellow. We will talk a little bit about event workers within the game. So we can see that we can go ahead and we can add event workers for this group. Now this event workers is in our workers section over here. So you do have to actually have event workers added in here. One new thing with your event workers that I want to point out is you have to have an email address. And then we have this new button up here at the top, which has type, and it says contracted or employee. The reason why this is now required is as a contractor, I can pay you through ArbiterGame. If you are a school employee, so the science teacher, the math teacher, they cannot be paid through ArbiterGame. They need to be paid through regular payroll because they're not a 1099 employee, they are a W-2 employee. So that is now required for you to be able to add an event worker. So we have our event workers in there. I could go ahead and I can choose my event workers that I want to put in here. By selecting that, I choose that I'm going to be an event worker, but I'm going to pay them $30, and they're going to be part of concessions. And we could go ahead and we could then give this person $100 because they're our coach for the night. Click on assign, and it's going to assign them. There we go. And now you can see our coach and concession worker, how much they're being paid. And then we would actually see them in our payments tab over here. We could actually go ahead and pay these officials. As you can see, we had me being the concession stand on the 12th, which I got paid $20 for, and I could go ahead and actually pay these. Now we'll talk about payments a little bit later in another webinar, but that's a way that you can go ahead and pay it. You'll also see that it's green because now we've added event workers and we're good to go. Last but not least, or the last 2, these are our facilities and our transportation. So if I were to go ahead and make sure we click on our facilities here, it's going to ask us to go ahead and actually choose that the facilities person has approved it. So we could click on here, shows that it's been approved. I click on save game, and we'll see that our facilities have been updated. There we go. Cleanup time's got to be after. There we go. 26. Now our facilities has been accepted. We're good to go. If I had transportation, there's usually a picture of a bus over here. Let's see if I can find one here. There's a bus. So this is where the transportation would need to be accepted or declined. So we see these particular icons really help you to determine what's going on with that game and what needs to be done. If you have yellow, that generally means somebody else needs to do something. If it's green, you're good to go. And if it's red, there's something you need to do. Now what we've done today is fairly similar to all the other options. So practice is the same. We'll get into meets and tournaments because those are a little bit different. Now, what's the difference between a meet and a tournament? Best way I always remember this is there's always a track meet, which means that there's multiple schools during one game, versus a tournament is actually multiple games. So if we talk about a meet, we want to go ahead and we're just going to create one game, which is our boys archery. We would select an opponent, and you can see once we've selected opponent, we would then be able to go ahead and add more opponents. We can continue keeping adding opponents for this particular meet. We go through and we do the facilities and all the different requests just like before. We're going to say that we're assigning by our school. Let's go ahead and create this meet real quick. Thanks, Jimmy. That's a good thing. If it doesn't go check, and there's always something red for you to be able to get. So here we are, here's our meet, and you'll actually see the different opportunities. As you see, red means something we need to do something. This is a great example of a situation where an opponent may allow me to accept their contract, but then somewhere where we're not able to accept the contracts. So if I hit accept here, and then I can look underneath the officials. I've said that the school is going to be applying the officials, which would be in our officials tab. We would have to have these people. So then we would go right ahead and we would assign these officials.
And when you're assigning the officials, obviously, like David pointed out, you have your officials tab where you can look at your list of officials. When you go to assign them, if they don't appear, say for example, if you went to assign and these wonderful names here, admin mobile wasn't showing up on the game, it would just mean there's some type of conflict, whether they have a block set up, but it just means they're not available.
Yep. You'll also see where in our officials section over to the right hand side, there's a section that says manage sports. We want to make sure we tell them which sport that they can actually officiate for. So if we want to say that they're baseball or individuals, we would then click on done managing a sports, and that'll help you to make sure that they appear. So we go through, that's our meet. Our tournament's very similar. So if we go ahead and we add a tournament in here, we can choose the start date, let's say for this Saturday. And our tournament's just gonna run for 2 days. We're gonna choose boys badminton here. We're gonna say they're varsity badminton. It's gonna ask you, do you have any tournament or do you need officials for this? We're gonna choose yes. Okay, so it says we don't have anything in here, so we wanna make sure we get that changed, which is fine. We can choose our participation fee, and we can go ahead and start to create this tournament. So it's $100 for the badminton. We create tournament, or tournament name. We'll do Sandy Classic. Always remember, anything with the star is required for you to do. Then you'll start to see very similar. So we have our sites. So there's multiple sites that maybe the tournament is involved with. You'll also see the different teams that'll be involved, and you'll be able to go ahead and add games. Now, one thing you'll notice is that with the tournament, that's interesting, is you'll be able to see that we only have this there. Why is my officials not showing up? Officials won't start showing up until we start to tell them, A, where they're going to be going to, and we need to make sure we add at least a game. So the date of the game, how many games, what's the duration, site, first game, hit save. Now if I were to save this tournament, the officials show up. There they are. So there we are, we're set to go. We have our tournaments, our games, our meets in the system for us. As we look at these all, like I said, these all determine what we need to do. If we notice that there's something we need to accomplish, it'll be in red for that. Now the last thing we'll talk about is importing games. Now importing games is something that it's great to do. It's something that'll save you some time. You'll go ahead and you'll click on that importing games and you'll download the template. As you download this template, what you'll need to do is it's important for you to be able to use that template. So let me go ahead through some movie magic and open up that template real quick. Okay, so here's my template. Now it's important we do a couple of things within a template. Everything needs to be the way it's put on the system. So we definitely don't want to hide anything. We don't want to delete anything. If you don't use that column, make sure you click up here and see if it's required or not. So you can see that we have to actually put in a date and that it's required and how we put that date in. So if we were to go ahead and say that this is going to happen on February 2nd, 2018, the system automatically puts it in the correct date for us. We can look at the time it's required. So we'll say that it's at 12 o'clock. If I put it out here, the system's going to put AM. We're not playing that early in the morning. So we're going to go ahead and change this to PM. Now you can see all of a sudden something didn't happen right. So let's go ahead. Make sure we have that in the system correct. So there we have it in our system. We're good to go. Now, when there's a drop-down box next to it, we encourage you to use this drop-down box because it's important for our system to be able to know exactly how it's spelled so it can match it up. So making sure instead of baseball, it's not BB, it's baseball freshman girls. You can check to see that that is required for the home team. We can look to see it's not required for our opponents. So we can either leave it blank. That would be term to be announced. Our site is required. And so on and so forth. Once this is done, and once you've saved it onto your computer, you'll go ahead and choose the Browse button. Then you'll go to your downloads, you'll choose your games, and you go ahead and choose the upload. Now mine probably won't upload because there were some failed records and I didn't have anything specifically in there. You'll be able to see how many imported, how many failed, and different things like that. So that's our importing games.
And like Dave said, the importing game feature is really helpful. It'll save you a lot of time. One thing though I would recommend, if you do download a template and you put in like your schedule for baseball, if you're going to move on to another sport like softball or soccer, please download a new template every single time. Just one of the things that happens in support is people will just kind of copy and paste from one old template and just kind of go over the work they've already done. And our importer is a little bit finicky with that. So that'll just save you a couple of headaches. And then if you do have any problems and you call into support and you need help with your import file, that's awesome. We'll be able to help you out. Just be prepared or be in a place where you can actually send us the file that you were trying to import. Because really, when it comes down to it, we'll just have to look at the file to see, just in case something got formatted incorrectly, or if there was an extra space or a column accidentally got deleted or renamed.
Thanks, Jimmy. And that is very true. So our importer is an awesome tool that we can use. Just know it is very specific. And so it's important that you use those specificities so we can make sure that it goes correctly and successfully for you. And we're always here, obviously, to help answer questions. And Jimmy will have that information, but it's just success@arbitersports.com or call us at 800-311-4060. So that ends kind of our game section here. We have some questions that have come in that we're gonna help answer. We're gonna stay on here as long as we can to answer any of those questions. We appreciate you coming. And once again, we're here to help answer any questions. And I'll turn the time over to Jimmy to help us answer some of those questions.
All right, so we have a question from Jennifer. Looks like she just missed the section where we got started with the game importer. So Jennifer, you just go to your schedule tab, like where you see right there. You'll click on the green box, add new at the very bottom. It says import games. Click on that. And we have that link that'll get you the template. So you can fill that out before uploading your schedule. So just on that games tab, the new game, you need to download the template.
And then the template looks very similar. It'll pull up in Excel. And then, like I said, you'll want to make sure that you highlight over these to make sure you see what exactly is required and not required, and try to use the drop-down boxes as much as possible. Thanks, guys, for those questions. Keep them coming in. So good question, guys, that came in a little bit about using maybe a different format or anything like that for our importing games. Unfortunately, at this time, our importer requires that Excel and that specific file to use. So just we're in the process of trying to make this better and more user friendly, but it is something that we do have to use that specific template with that particular order with that particular spelling so that our importer understands it better. So do apologize, but good information. We're willing to definitely work on some of those things to get it better for you. So great question from Vicky. The answer is yes. You're able to import away games as well as home games.
Yeah, just on the template in column D, just the designation there, it says home or away. So you can just select whether it's a home or an away game.
This section right here. And we're still here for probably about 3 or 4 more minutes. If you guys have any questions, anything you'd like to see, hear, do, please let us know. We're more than happy to accommodate that. Thank you.
All right, so just another question here about if we think it's easier to use the imports opposed to putting the games in one by one. I would say if you're doing just a single game, the importer is going to be a lot faster and a lot easier for you. There'll probably just be a little bit some growing pains with getting used to the importer, but once you get some practice with it and you get really good with that, it makes putting in games a lot easier and a lot faster. The meets and the tournaments, I'd probably recommend putting those in the traditional way. That would be the best way to do that. So single games, like your regular season games, preseason games, anything that's a single game, use the importer. But with tournaments and meets, I would stick to doing that the traditional way.
Good questions, everybody. Appreciate them coming in. Appreciate you guys being here. Hi guys, appreciate you guys being here. That's going to conclude our webinar today. Hope we've answered all those questions for you. Look forward to doing more webinars with everybody. Once again, if you go to that arbitersports.force.com/schools, there's a section about webinars, as well as you should get an email promoting our new webinars and different things that we're doing. Hey, thank you so much for coming, and hope you have a wonderful day.